So Happy New Year. For those of you who are new to the Centers for Spiritual Living, in January we like to revisit the basic fundamental principles of this teaching. And one of the things I like to say is that when we say this teaching, the Science of Mind teaching, what we teach are universal truth principles. So you can actually find these principles everywhere, in all the religions and all the philosophies, in just your everyday life. And that's what this theme for this year is, spirituality in life. That it's not just principles that are removed or something separate that you do do your spiritual practices and that's it. It's to be lived every day, all day long, that these principles are alive and vital. And so we want to revisit them over and over and over because they never stop. And we never stop. We're always growing. We're always growing deeper. So for some of you, these principles are very familiar, and you've been practicing them already for years. Allow ourselves to be, as Shunryu Suzuki, have that beginner's mind. Because when we have that beginner's mind, we allow new possibilities to emerge that we've never seen before. I hope none of us are done on our journey. I hope none of us have already, I got it all, I'm done, I'm out of here. So may we all learn or reveal or hear within, first and foremost, this morning exactly what we need to hear. So many of us have heard the phrase, in the beginning there was the Word. But in the beginning, before there ever was creation, there is just this isness. Ernest Holmes liked to call it the thing itself because he was trying to get away from all the conceptual baggage that sometimes we carry with this infinite love intelligence that surrounds and unfolds and is in, through, and as all life. I'm very grateful as you did your treatment this morning, you used several words to identify this infinite presence, because this presence is beyond any one word, beyond any one concept. It's hard to describe, and yet we are experiencing it all the time. It doesn't come, it doesn't go, it's not changing, it is absolute, it is ever present, it is always already, and it is infinitely good. It is, from the philosopher Plotinus, who Ernest Holmes loved, the way he likes to say it, our first principle is the divine presence is in, through, and as all life, and yet never absorbed by that life. It is in, through, and as all creation, and yet not absorbed by that creation. So everything that we see, taste, touch, and smell is an expression, a manifestation in form of this divine presence. But everything in this world of form, is changing all of the time. Even energy changes. Energy changes, gets lights, it gets dark, dense, up and down. We have the yin-yang symbol, we have duality, we have heaven and earth. There's so many wonderful understanding of this flow of life, of the positive and the negative flowing. But beyond that, out beyond the field of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there, as Rumi said, to move to that transcendent place that doesn't come and go. It's so subtle, though, it's hard to connect with. But that is the place, the source of each and every one of us. That every one of us is made in the image and likeness of this divine presence, of the thing itself, of Brahma, of God, of Allah, of the ground of all being. Whatever languaging, the universe, life, energy, I hear people use many different words. God is often a word used. This presence, this divine presence, is who we are. That is our absolute nature. Even our personalities, our stories, those can change. Even our DNA can change. Sometimes we like to think that's fixed. There's nothing fixed in the world of form ever. It's always changing. It gets birthed into form and it dies. But this absolute essence of our nature never dies. It is that which we can build our life on, to build our life on pure spirit. So we want to put our attention on this presence that is in, through, and as all creation. Now, when we say it's infinite, one of the ways we want to understand that, because we can say, well, the God of the Judeo-Christian world is, they would say one God, but there was still a separation. Even though they said it was one God, it was a God out there. But what we recognize is that when we say God in our community, using these words, the thing itself, is that there's no separation. There's no place where it stops and something else begins. It's infinite. If it stopped somewhere and there was something else, then it would be finite, right? This is basic principle. If it's infinite, if it is the source of all creation, it is all creation. It's not giving itself to creation. It is the creation itself. That means that each and every one of us is the divine presence. We are vibrating and pulsating as this infinite life spring, this pure spirit. We can't be outside of it even if we tried. We can't be away from it. We can turn our attention, our mind away from it, but it's still living as us. And that's an important thing to realize. Whatever our thoughts about it are, it doesn't change the fact that we're all spiritual beings and that we are living in a spiritual universe all of the time. So the cornerstone of our spiritual practice is to recognize and see this as deeply and profoundly as we can throughout our days and nights. Our dream life, there's spirit. There's nothing that is spirit, and this world will challenge us, because how could spirit be there? Our job is to see with the eyes of pure spirit, to see that oneness. The cornerstone of our philosophy, one power, one presence, and it is infinitely good. Where we have these other examples, heaven and hell, yin and yang, the duality, what we recognize is when we move to this absolute presence, it is all good. It is all good. And that is so essential that we learn and know this. Today, Jack was singing about surrendering. It's very hard to surrender to something if we still have tiny beliefs that it has an evil intent or a dark intent. How do we surrender to something that we do not trust, that it's going to punish us if we don't think the right way or do the right things, we're going to get in trouble? There's this punishing or judgmental essence. That's a dualistic God. This God is infinitely good. This divine presence, this infinite love intelligence is always good. It is always for us. It is for each and every one of us uniquely and powerfully. As we open and allow ourselves to receive the good and we start seeing the world, that everything that is happening behind all the appearances, behind all the stories about the appearances, is this infinite space of goodness. That becomes a really profound practice just in of itself. To recognize and see that which is beyond appearance is always good. To hold that, to be in that space, is transforming in of itself. The next place we move into in our teaching is the creative process. Every one of us are part of the creative process. We're in form. As long as we're on earth, we're in form. This infinite love intelligence is always birthing itself into form in every moment of every day. It is birthing itself into form. None of it is staying the same, but there's patterns. So this law, what we call the law, there's this energy that surrounds and unfolds all of us. It's unlimited. It's everywhere present, is in, through, and as each and every one of us. It doesn't have volition, this law. This law is a responsive energy. It responds to volition. So it responds to, if we have habit patterns, it just responds to those habit patterns, or habit patterns of feeling, of thinking, individually and collectively. This law is at work all of the time, responding to our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, and reflecting back to us these thoughts and these beliefs that we carry within us. It's always at work. I will never forget when I was in foundations class, that one moment where it was saying, the law is always at work whether you know it or not. You've always been using the law. And I thought that was so interesting. And I started looking at my life, how I've been using it and not even knowing it. Just how my beliefs, like how did my world reflect what I believed about the world? And sometimes I wasn't aware that I believed these things. I thought I believed different things, but it takes us deeper. Do I really believe? Is my world really reflecting these deep beliefs that I have about the world? What's wonderful about that is it starts moving us into greater empowerment. When we start realizing the power of our thoughts, the power of our feelings, feelings and thoughts really need to go together. If our thoughts and our feelings are disconnected, it's not very creative, it's not very impactful in the law. The law really responds to the energy and intention. In fact, someone just sent me a Bruce Lee video. Don't know why, but they sent me his Bruce Lee video. It was great. It was a minute long, and he was teaching his student. And the student was saying, I think. He goes, don't think, feel. The power of the universe comes from feeling, and you need to channel all that emotion. Thinking and feeling go together. That law really responds powerfully the more we are in alignment. And so if we have things that are in our life that we don't particularly care for, that are not operating, we are not in a place of hopelessness. We are not in a place of helplessness, that we actually have choice. We can be empowered to start patterning new feelings as well as thoughts working together, and it works to bring the body into it, the body, the emotions, and the mind, to start creating a new sense of how we want to live our life. And the law will respond to it. That's why this teaching is so wonderful. It moves us from victimhood to empowerment. We do not have to be stuck anywhere. We always have a choice of how we want to respond to the world that is in our life. What was fascinating to me as I was first learning this teaching was I grew up in a little bit of a different family. Maybe some of you also were raised in a family that were agnostic or atheist. But I had a father who really believed strongly in his abilities as a thinker. And my mom also did, but she also was born with this inherently, insanely positive outlook on life. She used to say all the time, Harriet, it's the law of averages. It's going to work out. Just keep at it. It always works out for your good. Years later, I said, Mom, where did you get that? She goes, I don't know, just that's the way it works. And she so believed it and said it all the time that, of course, it always worked for her. Things always worked out. She didn't really worry too much about things. Just keep at it. And the law of averages are for you. It'll work out. She just had this upbeat, positive view of the world. So being raised in a family like this, there was no sense of victimization. We weren't raised to be victims. There's always a sense of you have choices. You have the ability to think things new. Think about new things, new ways of thinking. You know how to get resources if you need to. You can be self-sufficient. You can be responsible. So I had all of that. So it was interesting to see how well my family used the law without knowing that they were using the law, and that they created very good lives for themselves using this law. But it was also perplexing for me, because then I started thinking, well, what do we need all this God stuff for? You know, if you just think really strongly and with positive ideas, what's the whole purpose of the divine? Well, both my parents have struggled when they reached their 80s because they had to deal with their mortality. And that was very hard. They loved this world. They were totally engaged in this world. Everything was about, I only have this much time, and they gave themselves fully. But when it came to the end of their life, it was terrifying because they didn't have anything else. So then I came to the reasoning, okay, it's okay to be agnostic and atheist until your 80s, and then you really need to start doing some spiritual work. So it's interesting because, now let me say for myself, I always knew the divine was important, but I was just saying, if the purpose of our teaching is only to create a life that works for yourself, and I have siblings that care about the world, so they weren't totally self-centered, they were in service, in work that they felt benefited humanity. Why do we need this God? You know, if that's our goal, is to create a world that works, we can have strong thoughts. We can use this law without having to pray and meditate. None of them ever prayed and meditate. I'm like, they do fine. They don't pray and meditate. What do I got to pray and meditate for? Because something's missing. We are spiritual beings. Like I said, it doesn't matter if we're aware of it or not. It's always there. And there's an essence of our nature that we deny, that we don't get to fulfill. And I really got to see that as my parents got older. I thought, they led lives, but they were half lives. There was so much that they were missing by not being in tune with their spiritual essence, they had the things, they had the material stuff, but there was still something missing. And as my brothers have evolved, they started to see that when they had challenges, I know my one brother, when he went through a really difficult time, he said, I was so surprised. I mean, he had the greatest arguments for why there was no God. And yet he said, the first thing I did was say the Lord's Prayer. And he's been praying ever since. He said, I felt something. Another brother was having some health challenges, started doing yoga for the health challenges, and he was doing this breath work, and suddenly it opened him up. It's like there was something more. And so now he's a vegan yoga teacher who wants to go to India to study. I mean, it's amazing how spirit works. Because when we start allowing something, that moment, that's why crisis, they say, suffering often opens our heart, because if we're going along, everything is fine, we feel like we don't need anything else. It's just us. But it's very lonely. It's very isolating to think, well, it's just about me creating a good life for myself. And sure, I help other people, but I don't really know the depth of our connection. I don't really know this transcendent self, this immortal being within my own being. And that becomes the spiritual aspect of why we are here. We understand that there is a law that is always responding to us, to where our attention goes and where our attention and energy flows. There we start to see manifestation and growth. So where does our attention grow? Sometimes when we come to this teaching, we get really excited about the things we can manifest, and that's good because we don't want to be victims. If there are things that we need to change in our life, we need to use these principles. We need to use this law to start creating much healthier lives externally. We're never here to be a victim to our environment, to our world. People are using the law the way our patterns of thinking, we don't even know we're doing it. We don't even know how we're using it, but we're just thinking the things our parents thought or our DNA leads us to or our culture. But when we start becoming conscious of what our thoughts are, we can start consciously changing. That's incredibly empowering. But it's limited. Then there's this whole divine essence that's wanting to express itself. One of the things, as you I'm sure have heard when I pray, one of my favorite phrases, and I probably put it in every prayer, is more than we ever imagined. Because the divine essence is first cause. Most of what we will create of our own self comes from patterns of our own mind, or we see it out there. It's something that's already exists. It's very hard for us to think of something absolutely new that we've never considered before, because where would that come from? In fact, Willis Harman, who is the president of Institute of Noetic Sciences, wrote a book called Conscious Creativity, and he gave example after example of scientists, of artists, of inventors, of people who came up with new ideas, and the quotes that they used were, I don't know where it came from, or suddenly I was hit by an idea, or well, I think it was Robert Frost said there were brownies running around in my head creating. I told you a friend who said, I don't believe in God, but I do feel like there's these 3 aliens above me that are constantly blessing me. But the point is there is, in a sense, that it's coming from somewhere else, that this divine presence infuses us with new ideas that we of ourselves will not create, which is why I like to say, like we've never imagined before, because it's opening itself to new life in every moment, new life that of ourselves we will not come up with. We will not think of this new way. We will tend to think of what we already know, what we're familiar with. May not just be within our own family. We start looking and say, I like what they're doing. I want to do what they're doing. But the divine essence isn't limited by anybody. It has no past precedent. So the more we open to this spiritual life, the more we get to be a divine vehicle of love and of light and of joy and of goodness that knows no opposite, where there is nothing other, there is no separation. And when we start radiating and pulsating from first cause, it becomes an effortless blessing to all people, because we are coming from that place. We now are including the entire cosmos, because this oneness, time and space is a human construction. Spirit is not a human construction. So right where I am is the infinite nature of pure spirit. Right where you are, Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine was saying that we are the center of the universe where there is no circumference, that we inhabit all of the universe, which we cannot comprehend when we think of time and space, because they have form. But God is formless. The spiritual presence is formless. Everything is right here, right now, in this moment. All past, all future, all space, right here, right now in our consciousness. So as we start operating and living from this state of consciousness, we are impacting and blessing the entire creative known universe. Not through our will, not through our effort, but simply through our alignment with the truth of who and what we really are. Is this a powerful teaching or what? The cornerstone of our teaching is affirmative prayer. Again, affirmative prayer starts with first cause, not with just changing our thoughts, but first acknowledging where our thoughts arise from. This divine love intelligence of the universe. It acknowledges that there's something greater than our human patterns. And then it is in, through, and as each and every one of us. It's pouring through us. It is shining its light through and as each and every one of us. The theme this year is spirituality in life. Often when we meditate, we can feel removed from life. I was just reading Master Eckhart, a Christian mystic, and he was saying, no, you don't need to remove yourself from life. We need people who are awake, who are in life, who are practicing this presence in the midst of activity, because all life is spiritual, and it doesn't become activated until we activate it. We are the lighthouses. We are here to activate this light, and the way we can do that is through prayer. Now, we can pray in many different ways. We can pray knowing and seeing wholeness and perfection, and that becomes more powerful when our intention is focused on pure spirit. If the law is always responding to where our attention is, and our attention it becomes more and more focused on first cause, if our attention becomes more and more on the infinite goodness of pure spirit, and we are holding that wherever we go with whatever we are doing, and the law is responding, we're not controlling how it's going to show up. That's why it's never before imagined. But we can trust that it's going to be good, because we have been holding spirit, and things will start to shift around us in ways that we can't imagine, because we have let go of our own human control, our own habit patterns, and allowed something brand new to be birthed in every moment. This is a new year. I don't care how long we've been on this path, new possibilities are available to every single one of us today. In this moment, every moment is a possibility for a brand new moment, a new way of being, a new way of seeing, not through our effort, not through our struggle, not through making things happen, but through the allowing and attention of pure spirit to move through and as us. I believe what it means to be a lighthouse is that we're a house of prayer, first and foremost. When we are a house of prayer, inwardly, individually, collectively, we are choosing to see the wholeness and the perfection of every person with whom we come in contact. When I was at Agape, there was a woman who wanted to feed the homeless. She wasn't yet a practitioner at Agape. You could do anything, but she needed to have a practitioner serve on her committee. But she decided I want to feed the homeless. So every Saturday of herself, she just invited people. They packed lunches and gave out food to the homeless. She was a practitioner classmate of mine. She did become a practitioner. The ministry's still going, feeding the homeless every Saturday. But it's how it was done that makes all the difference. When you went to serve, when we went to make the lunches and when we went to serve, the absolute, first of all, everything was done in prayer and with the clarity. She was very clear with us. You are not giving to someone less than you. You are not giving to a victim. When you give this food, you are giving it to someone who is all perfect and complete. They are a brilliant, radiant light of pure spirit, and it is our job to hold and see them in their absolute perfection. We are not coming as the saviors to people who are down here. We are coming as exact equals. And that's the place from which we do service. That is the place from which we reach out into the world. When we are in that place of prayer, we are in the place of truth. We are at home, wherever we go or whatever we do. Spirituality in life. I was at a red light today, and there's a guy crossing the street, just blessing him. I know the infinite goodness is surrounding and folding you. This entire universe is for your good. You are surrounded in love. You are seen and known. These drive-by blessings that we get to do all of the time, right? Wherever we go, we can hold that absolute truth for each and every individual with whom we come in contact. When we go to work, I see the wholeness and the perfection. They may not see it at that point. We don't need to say this out loud. We don't need to address the appearances. We go to the truth of the Spirit. One in God is a majority. One in God is a majority. One in truth is a majority. One in oneness is a majority. Your consciousness starts to have the greatest impact on your environment when you are standing in the truth. This project is God's project. It's a divine love intelligence. I know some people don't like the word God. Whatever word that you use that resonates with your soul, this is the divine presence's project. My tasks today are the divine's tasks today. My to-do list is the divine's to-do list. Every person with whom I come in contact is a holy person, is a holy presence of pure spirit. Now, there's one aspect of this that everyone has a blessing. There's a blessing also to being raised by agnostic and atheists. So I'm going to share it with you now, for those of you who don't know. The thing that I recognize that they gave me, they don't have a lot of guilt. And as I moved more and more into this teaching, because there was a belief in them that, yes, things are going to work out, but yeah, things are a struggle too. It's not like they expect life to be easy and graceful all the time. I think sometimes we think, well, if we keep doing all this spiritual work, life's going to get very easy, and everything's going to flow, and I'm not going to have any struggle, I'm not going to have any problems, everything will be perfect. It's like someone asked Shunryu Suzuki, will enlightenment resolve everything? And he said, no. That was it. Don't expect enlightenment to resolve it. And what I saw that was with my family, that it's not that things weren't struggles, but they would just deal with them. They didn't beat themselves up and like, oh, how did I create this, and what did I do, and my consciousness wasn't in the right place. They would even say sometimes not nice things. But you know what? They didn't expect to be perfect. They weren't expecting to be saints. They never had this expectation, I should be a saint. I should never think bad thoughts. So because they didn't have that expectation, they didn't spend a lot of time beating themselves up, self-flagellating themselves for, oh, I didn't do this right, and I'm not spiritual enough, and I'm not loving enough, and oh, I got sick, and they didn't, that's part of life. But I have the resources to deal with it. So I just get better and move on. And it was, my mom I remember that she had gotten sick this one time. Literally, I was trying to think of time. I could think one time. And I reminded her, she goes, no, I never did. I said, yeah. She goes, oh, yeah. I said, you went to the hospital. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it wasn't anything. And it wasn't, do you understand what I'm saying? So as we're looking to hold and be a house of prayer is not about being a saint. A house of prayer is not that we stop being human, that we are infinite beings of light and of love, but we are still limited beings too. In Buddhism, they call it simultaneous awareness. We are aware of our divine nature, we are aware of everyone else's divine nature, and we are aware of our human nature, that I still have limitations, that I still have a body, mind, and a history, and a personality, and genetics, and DNA, and all of it that is affecting me too, and I have deep and abiding compassion for my limitations as well as other people's. This really hit me when I was working in a psychiatric hospital, and I was reading Joel Goldsmith about everything's God, everything's oneness. And I was so focused on seeing the wholeness and perfection of everyone. And I remember going back to the nurse's station, and they were asking me about the patient's psychological challenges. I'm like, yeah, I didn't really notice those. They're whole, perfect, and complete. It wasn't very helpful. So I had to learn to do both, to both see the wholeness and the perfection, and at the same time, see their humanness, but now I wasn't in judgment because I was seeing them as whole, perfect, and complete, having these experiences that were limited. I wasn't holding them to that. I was open because they were pure spirit, that those patterns could change at any moment. New things, new insights, new revelations. People could come in, resources, anything could change those patterns. So that wasn't their identity to me. Their identity was the divine, but I didn't want to not be conscious of my humanness. You get sick, we're human. Don't beat yourself up. We are not saints. You might think things that are always positive and enlightened. That's okay. What makes it worse is the beating of ourselves up. That makes it more dense. Just recognize it. Oh, there was a moment. I was reading Brother Lawrence's book, Practicing the Presence. This is a man who just lived God day in and day out. And he said his process of getting there, he said, there's so many times in the day where he just would forget to pray, and he wasn't in that state. He said it took him years to get to be in a place where he was in that state all the time. He said, but I never judged myself. I just knew I was forgiven the moment I did it. I got away from it. I was forgiven immediately. I accepted it and moved on. That's how we want to live our life in prayer. We are not being judged. There's not this infinite love intelligence of the universe that is judging us and saying, oh, they screwed up again. There they went, going, being human again. That does not exist. It is love. It is its nature to be love. It cannot stop loving. It will never stop loving us. It will never judge us. It is never out to hurt us. It is never out to seek revenge. That is all lies. It loves, it loves, it loves, and that love is not birthless or deathless. It is absolute. It is unchanging. So we get to be that place. When we are made in the image and likeness, we get to be that with ourselves and with one another. How are we talking to ourselves? What are these thoughts that we're carrying around? Where is our attention? When we're in conversations with people, the law is at work then. Where is our attention? Where is our energy? If we're saying things that aren't nice, sometimes I'm surprised things that come out. I'm like, oh. And then at first I'm like, that's terrible. But I think, well, why would I think that? And then I learn it as a place of healing for myself. Why do I feel afraid? What's that? Anything, when we come out with negative stuff, it's our own stuff. It's our own fears and anxieties and feelings of separation that come out. It's just information. It's not information to beat yourself up in. Everything is for our good. Everything is for our good. Everything is for our good. Is everything for our good? Yes. Everything is for our good. We are not being judged for any of it. We are just opening our heart and allowing it all to be guidance and teachers for us to become more and more that divine transparency of pure love in all conditions and all circumstances, whether it's the yin or the yang, we love. In the dark and the light, we love. We have that choice to respond to everything with unconditional pure love, because that's what we are made to be. And that it becomes easier and easier the more we stay in the state of prayer. Spirituality in life is about a life of prayer, about being in prayer throughout our days, throughout our nights, as much as we possibly can in prayer, affirmative prayer, where we are knowing the absolute truth all of the time, as much as we can. We're going to get tired. It's exhausting. I've been trying it. It gets tiring because we're retraining our minds. Not just our minds, our subconscious, our emotions. We're trying to open our entire being to a vaster, oceanic, infinite place. Sometimes I just need a break and go into the darkness. But it's so worth it. It is so worth it. Because when we are this house of prayer, we truly are a lighthouse to the world. Let's pray. Well, we already been praying because we already know that right in this room, we've never been outside of this presence, that it's been fully alive and activated as each and every one of us here and now, that it was before we ever entered this space, and it is fully alive and activated, and it always will be through the rest of our day, through the rest of our life. We will never be outside of this infinite love intelligence that is in, through, and as all life, all creation, all form, all energy, one power, one presence. We do not make it happen. We do not force it. We simply place our attention on that which is real, that is birthless and deathless, that is ever present. When we know that we know who and what we really are, what life is, what all creation is, the galaxies upon galaxies, the grains of sand, the leaves on a tree, the drops in the ocean, every cell and atom of our body, when we know that behind all of it is this one power and this one presence, the fight stops, the war ends, the peace of pure spirit is revealed. The goodness of pure spirit is allowed to shine through in every area of our life. We allow this divine presence to be us with our full permission. We say yes and live in that yes here and now and always. We allow this yes to be alive and awake in our work life, in our financial life, in all of our relationships. We open to its goodness in intimacy, in care, in compassion, in all of our relationships, those that are personal, those that are work, and those are our global citizens, our brothers and sisters all around the planet, with plants, animals, the earth, four-leggeds, two-leggeds, water, air, all of it. The stars and the galaxies, all of it. We are one with all of it. All the love that has ever been and ever will be is right here and right now in this room, vibrating and pulsating as each and every one of us. We are that place here and now. And when we allow and say yes, a full-on yes, and keep our attention, not just for a moment, not just for this prayer, but we live as we enter into the rest of the day. We stay in that awareness that the divine presence is behind all the appearances, behind every person with whom we come in contact, beyond all our things that we're doing today. Is behind all of it is this one power, this one presence, this one love, this one joy, this one creative essence. We are the light that lighteth up the universe. Our entire life shifts day by day, breath by breath, moment by moment. And people see that which they cannot understand. They feel it in our presence. We are a blessing to this world. I am so grateful. I am so grateful. I am so grateful to the power and the presence and the love of God that is fully, always, and ever present as all of us. To the thing itself, as the thing itself, in the thing itself, through the thing itself. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. In deep abiding grace and everlasting joy, we release this word into the law of life, letting it reveal to us beyond what we could ever imagine. And I invite us all to say now, and so it is. Amen and amen.